Hello, welcome everyone back to E3 or to E3. I never know if there's someone new here, so I always cover my bases. But yeah, so welcome to E3. My name is Victor. Not obviously. I guess just to recap last series, if you guys weren't here for it or for all of it or whatever it may be, Ryan Barr, Jonathan Sarno. I know you guys weren't here, so, but yeah, nothing gets past me. Okay, so last series, we talked about, we proposed the question, who do we serve, right? And of course, the conclusion is God, is the obvious conclusion to that question. The reason we serve God is, we talked about all the different reasons, the different struggles that we can possibly go through trying to serve God, because it's difficult. It's not an easy decision, and it's not an easy task. And so this series, I think we kind of went on a kind of a similar route, but this is kind of meant to give us that motivation to understand why, like how we can possibly serve God. Someone that doesn't need serving really, but it's kind of an encouragement for all of us to go out and serve God. And so if you guys seen the posters around campus or the Facebook event or whatever it may be, the series is called Greatness, right? And it seems like a very kind of broad topic, but hopefully we can kind of hone that down a little and make it a little more obvious. So my personal talk is going to be about created for greatness, right? And that sounds fine and dandy, and it seems kind of obvious, but if you kind of look at it, I think you'll realize how much weight that carries, right? To be created for greatness. So the first question to propose is, what is greatness, right? And I feel like most talks start this way. They kind of, oh, what is this thing I'm talking about? Let me tell you. But yes, let me tell you. When I write my talks, I kind of just sit in my room and stare at my computer for a while until I come up with something good. It's really a huge waste of time. I should probably come up with a better method of doing that. But that's what I did, and this is what I came up with. I think in our society, there's two different types of greatness. Right? There's momentary greatness and ultimate greatness. And I will tell you what the difference is. Momentary greatness, I think, is something that we are all told that we want. Right? We're all after this moment of greatness, this acceptance, some sort of, recognition for something that we do, right? That's why we have participation ribbons for children that are terrible at said sport that they participate in. And a lot of times they don't even participate, they just show up. So it's like a showing up ribbon, right? And in a society where the Kardashians are, what do they do? I have no idea. If you can tell me, stop me afterwards and let me know what they do, because they have a whole show and it seems like they do nothing. But correct me if I'm wrong. Right, so in a society where these things are norms, where people get recognized for things that, honestly, most people shouldn't get recognized for, that's what we're always after, right? That recognition for something, anything. We will do anything for that recognition. And I think that's kind of been ingrained into us from day one. Right, so this momentary greatness, I feel, kind of relates, like the Kardashians, I guess they're celebrities, I'm assuming. That's why they have a show. But celebrities are kind of the most obvious one, and I kind of talked about celebrities in my talk about who do we serve. But during Dean's talk, when we were going through and throwing out ideas about this, the person that came up was Michael Jordan, and we ended up not going with that, but I feel like it's especially relevant to what I'm talking about. But there was an article written about Michael Jordan. He is 50 years young now. He can dunk a basketball. There's a picture that was just released, actually. I looked it up. So Michael Jordan, arguably one of the best basketball players of all time, right? And you could beg to differ and throw out other names, but he is. And it just talks about how unhappy he was, how unfulfilled he was. He's gone through a really expensive divorce, right? There's rumors of him coming back to play basketball at the age of 50. What? Seriously? Like, there's just so many things about him. He can't sleep at night because he has no idea what to do with himself. He is synonymous with basketball because that's where he invested all of his time and effort, this greatness that he's associated with, that from a young age, he was told that that's what he wants, is kind of gone now. He's eclipsed by all these current great players like LeBron James or Dwayne Wade, mediocre, actually. But LeBron James is the most obvious one. But he's kind of getting eclipsed by these people, and he has no idea what to do about it. He can't do anything about it. Time has caught up with him, and this greatness has kind of dwindled away, right? So what is this greatness to them? This greatness to these people, these celebrities, these famous people, and I don't want to group all famous and rich people into one category, but your stereotypical ones that you see on like E! News or whatever it may be. Like those people, what makes them great, on paper or, to our perception, actually ends up reducing them down to something less than themselves, right? They're identified with a thing, right? Michael Jordan is identified by basketball, right? Unless you like Michael Jordan or an avid basketball fan, if you give it like 10 years, you can probably run into Michael Jordan in the street and you won't know who that is. Like, that's shocking. We grew up with him, but, children coming through school now or entering high school probably may never recognize Michael Jordan. That's crazy that the greatest basketball player of all time won't even be recognized, And so what's true greatness, this ultimate greatness that I was kind of mentioning in contrast to this? And this ultimate greatness obviously should be tied to something eternal and something that goes much deeper than the person, right? It should be something external. And obviously the obvious answer to this, once again, is God, right? God is that eternal greatness. And, that seems like an obvious, underwhelming answer, but we will dive deeper into that, and hopefully you will get something out of this. So what does this greatness look like, right? We know what celebrities look like. We know what being rich looks like. We know what, being good at something looks like. Well, what does this ultimate greatness look like? And I think there was a quote that Bobby kind of gave last year, and I'm sure most of you guys have heard it, but it's from Pope Benedict, and I just kind of want to bring it up again. And it says, "The world promises you comfort, but you are not made for comfort. You are made for greatness." Right? And so just by looking at this quote, we know that greatness isn't something that we give up our lives for. It's not something that, I'm going to sacrifice going out and doing this and that just because I want to be great at something, because we were created for it. So it's ingrained into us. So this greatness is actually us living out our lives, living out what we were created for, right? So all these things that we're like, well, if I want to become great, I need to give this up, give that up. That's actually not true, according to Pope Benedict. And according to the definition of greatness, greatness is living out what you're called to do, what you're created for, right? So those moments of greatness, the momentary greatnesses, are what accumulate to make this ultimate greatness. So if we put all of our thought into, the next moment, right? We know that a lot of times we think something is great. Once we achieve it, it becomes, underwhelming and less fulfilling. And you're on to the next one, on to the next one. And if you keep living moment to moment, you'll never become fulfilled and you'll never reach that ultimate goal. So until you realize that these moments, even though are great, are building us up to something much, much bigger. Right? So how do we know that we're intrinsically created for greatness? Right? This might just be something that I'm telling you guys, and on the day we all die, we find out, we were actually created underwhelmingly, and we are not that great. Well, I think that the thing that came to my mind, we actually did this in Life Team, and that's what kind of got me thinking about this. But I think the best thing that can explain this phenomenon is The Lion King, believe it or not. So I actually have a clip for you guys from The Lion King, and I will get out of your way so you can see it. Okay, so we've had better ideas in our time here, I guess. But so within the clip of The Lion King, it's the part where Simba, after going out into the wilderness and becoming friends with, I think, a pig and a rat of some sort. Who knows? I'm not sure what kind of animals they are. A meerkat? Yes. A meerkat. So he becomes friends with these animals, and they are having the time of their lives, right? He's eating bugs, hanging out, and doing his thing. And he just constantly feels this like emptiness inside. And then he runs into his ex-lover, right? When they were lovers when they were children, he runs back into her in this forest. There's a very like hot and steamy scene where they roll down a hill. It was weird. But it's a kids movie. It's rated like PG. But so throughout all this, he finally realizes like there's something empty and missing inside of him, and so he meets the baboon of some sort? Rafiki. That's his name. Okay, good. I'm not good with names. So he meets Rafiki, and I think the first thing he says to him is like, "Oh, did you know my father?" And he's like, "Correction, or did you know my father?" He says, "Correction, I know your father." And so leads him through the forest, which sounds sketchy, but they go through the forest and they get to this like pond kind of thing, and he's like, "Oh, well, there he is." Points into the pond. Simba looks into the water, and he's like, "Oh, that's just me." And of course, he says, "Look hard." I don't know why that part just sticks out in my head. Look hard. And so he looks harder, and then his father all of a sudden appears in the clouds. Crazy, right? And so his father says that, you've forgotten who you are. You've forgotten who you're meant to be, right? And because you've forgotten who you are, you've forgotten who I am, right? And I think that kind of obviously has God connotations to it. And then he finally says that, remember that, what did he say? He said, "You're a king because I'm a king." And I'm paraphrasing now because I've forgotten this part. But at the end of the day, what he says is that because of who I am, that's why you are who you're meant to be, right? And so if that's the lesson that we draw from the Lion King, which is a great lesson, by the way, we're created for greatness because God is great, right? Because God is great is why we're intrinsically created great, right? We're his child, right? That's who we are. We're all God's children. That light's really bright. We're all God's children, and that is why we inherit everything that he possesses, right? His greatness, right? All these things that God has belongs to us. And I'm not saying that, just because now that, I'm a child of God, I'm great, so I'm just going to walk outside and do whatever I want. That's not what I mean. I mean, just like Simba, who had to go through this journey towards his greatness, we have to do the same thing, right? In there, he says that you are a king because I was a king, right? We're all kings and queens, and that's who we're created to be. So, once again, this poses the question of, okay, great, God is great, and I can possibly be great because it's somewhere ingrained in me. How does that happen? Like, how do I do that? That still sounds very intimidating. Yes, it does. And I think our most obvious example throughout the history of the church, and even before that, is the saints, right? Saints are, the Catholic Church gives us saints because they're role models that have walked this earth that we can all identify with. That is, like, I don't want to say they've achieved this greatness, but they've taken steps further than anyone else has towards this greatness. So I think that, let's see, I've lost my place now. All right. So within the Bible, I think it's in John's Gospel, there's literally a line that says, "God is love," right? And I've always liked this verse because it says so much in, 3 words. God is love. Like, God doesn't just love, God doesn't like, God is love. So the very existence of love is God. And so if God is love, God is that love, then we're supposed to be reflections of that love because that's who God is. Mother Teresa, I think, is one of the most obvious examples of love, right? She says, "Do ordinary things with great love." And she did that. She did, I wouldn't even call those ordinary things. I would say those were subpar, very difficult things to do that she did with great love. And like I mentioned before, our ultimate greatness is our goal, and we live up to these moments of greatness to achieve that. And honestly, I think Mother Teresa was one of those people that skipped those moments of greatness and just went with the most ordinary things she could possibly think to do to reach that greatness. And she's, throughout all of her books and things like that, she talks about how unmotivated she was, how dry she was spiritually because she was doing all these things. And I think that's probably one of the most difficult things to do, is to live out your life towards this greatness without kind of having those moments of satisfaction in your greatness. So kind of just to wrap it up, I know this quote has kind of been driven into you guys, since the beginning of the semester. But Father Thomas mentioned it on Mass on the Quad, and it's come up multiple times. But it's the St. Catherine of Siena quote that says that if you become who you're meant to be, you'll set the world ablaze. And I think just based on this talk alone, we can kind of conclude that we're all called to be a child of God. We're all called to love, and we're all called to greatness. Right? All these things that we're called to do will set the world ablaze. If we go out and we do everything with love, we work our hardest to become great because God is great, and we realize that we're children of God and that everyone that we encounter is a child of God, we will set the world ablaze. So that is all I have. Stop me later. We'll watch the clip together. Maybe we'll make a night out of it and watch the whole movie. So thank you. No, not you, Colin.